choosing and changing looks, clothing, morphology, all these have an emotional impact on the user as well as creating an incentive to learn the technology. So, I'm just going to throw a shout out to the crowd. Do you find this is true for you? When you first came into Second Life, were you excited about being able to choose an avatar? And as time is going on, do you feel excited about getting to make changes? And when Second Life, introduced mesh avatars and that kind of thing. Yeah, right? It's cool because we can be who or whatever we want if we really want to. And there's something about that that's not just personally freeing affectively, but it actually engages your brain in such a way that you really don't get a lot of other places. And we'll talk some more about that. At the same time, the uncanny valley, a concept first introduced by Masahiro Mori, probably mispronounced that, offers a compelling lens through which to examine the psychological effects of near-human digital agents. Originally applied to robotics, the uncanny valley describes the discomfort people feel when encountering artificial entities that appear almost but not quite human. As AI avatars and gamified learning systems become increasingly sophisticated, this model finds new relevance in learning, especially regarding older learners who may have later exposure to games and gaming environments. So younger people, right? And most like I'm old, guys. I'm just going to say it. I just turned 62 and I did not start. I got into Second Life about 2006, and it was probably on Rosie Hush, and it was probably the first gaming environment. Well, if that was true, my knees are 80, but my brain is probably 12. So you're going to find that out during this presentation, and Pet Love can actually verify that I'm about 12 years old mentally. Um, And because of that, because my first exposure to any kind of video gaming environment was really Second Life, that makes a big difference, right? Like my neuroplasticity has probably stayed really strong because of coming into the virtual world in the gaming environment. I don't know how many of you feel that's true for you if you are a person of a certain age. So, when by relating by relating the Uncanny Valley framework onto gamified learning environments, we begin to see a new threshold emerge, and one where avatar design, realism, and relational resonance directly impact learner motivation, creativity, and that neuroplasticity, which is all so important to us nowadays. So the concept of the uncanny valley, as I said, was first introduced by Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori in 1970. And in his seminal essay, Mori proposed that as robots become more human-like in appearance and behavior, they elicit increasingly positive emotional responses until the point is reached where the resemblance becomes unsettling rather than comforting. And this dip in emotional affinity, known as the uncanny valley, reflects a psychological tension between familiarity and perceived artificiality. So, over the decades, this model has influenced design decisions across. Oops, I forgot to use my speakeasy. Sorry. This model has influenced design decisions across robotics, animations, and AI, as several robotics companies have adjusted their approach to avoid the uncanny valley altogether. So Honda's Asimo, for instance, adopts a sleek, non-human form that emphasizes function over mimicry, and Boston Dynamics Spot robot resembles a mechanical quadruped. The can't even say it. Mechanical quadru just know it's a four-legged thing, rather than a humanoid, sidestepping the valley entirely, so that they're not even dealing with that. And similarly, Sony's Abo robotic dog leans into stylization and playfulness, fostering an emotional connection without triggering that uncanny discomfort. So in the realm of digital avatars, Nintendo's Mii characters and Apple's Memojis exemplify the power of abstraction. And these avatars are intentionally, thank you. Yes, it is. It is a tough quadrupod. What? Quadruped. Um, so these avatars are intentionally cartoonish, and they allow users to project identity resonance uh, and emotion without the dissonance of the near human realism. So such design choices suggest that emotional resonance may be better achieved through interpretive representation than through direct imitation. Additionally, it might represent other opportunities for cognitive optimization and learning. Four legs good. Exactly. Exactly. I'm going to talk about that pause that in very briefly because there's a whole section to this that I haven't developed yet that has to do with exactly that, with things like animal avatars, mythical avatars, and anthropomorphized animal avatars. So, as AI avatars and gamified learning environments grow more sophisticated, the Uncanny Valley offers a valuable framework for understanding critical thinking and artistic interpretation by learners, and the consequential impact on learning as well by recontextualizing the model within educational design. We can begin to explore how realism, stylization, and relational cues shape the cognitive emotional terrain of digital learning. So let's talk about applying the model to learning in gaming environments. In the virtual world, the emotional dynamics of learner avatar interaction become central to engagement. So, avatars, virtual tutors, AI companions, and agents are no longer peripheral. They are the interface through which learners are navigating content, assessment progress, and forming cognitive emotional bonds. This shift invites a reimagining of the Uncanny Valley, not as a robotics phenomenon, but as a learning threshold. So, case in point, how many of you have felt that you have made relationships in world that transcend your some of your relationships in real life? I know I have. What do you think? You have some? Yeah. Look at the enthusiasm. Absolutely. I used to say that when you met people virtually, it was almost like mind reading, right? It was almost like ESP because we don't have all the interference from the outside world, and you can actually really relate to people's emotion and cognition in a way that's really hard to do in a real environment that is filled with noise, right? Filled with social noise, cognitive noise, emotional noise. Okay, enough on that. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with my speakeasy. Okay. Um, so in gamified and virtual world environments, avatars often serve as proxies, right, for identity, agency, and relational feedback. And when these avatars approach hyperrealism, featuring lifelike facial expressions, skin textures, and human-like gestures, they may inadvertently trigger discomfort or detachment, especially among younger or neurodiverse learners. Conversely, stylized or surreal avatars offer interpretive space, allowing learners to project themselves into the experience without that cognitive dissonance. This phenomena mirrors Mori's original insight. Emotional affinity peaks, not perfect realism, but at a sweet spot where abstraction and recognition coexist. Okay, so in Mori's model, you actually had these two peaks, and there was this place where they met, and that was like, don't go outside of this. That's where you get the optimum, right? Once you get beyond that, people get creeped. I call it the creep factor. Okay, so you start to get creeped out with what you're looking at. And so, in educational context, this sweet spot fosters trust, creativity, and neuroplasticity. Learners engage more deeply when avatars feel relatable yet open ended. So, when they can fill in the blanks with their imagination rather than scrutinize what feels off or missing. This experience encourages the learner to dig in deeper, learning more skills to manipulate and customize their avatar resulting in a reduction in fear of trying and making mistakes that translates into a positive transfer of learning, not only in specifically similar technologies, but also with regard to the utilization of knowledge of technology in general. People become brave about trying, right? Um, if I can do this with my avatar, I can easily master this other program. Or I will learn to use this program because it allows me to make things for my avatar, like Blender or Meshy. These things speak directly to Bandura's theories of self-efficacy and self-reliance, as well as Maslow's hierarchy regarding intrinsic motivation. By adapting the Uncanny Valley model to avatar design, we gain a framework for designing avatars and interfaces that promote emotional safety, cognitive flexibility, and sustained motivation. This sets the stage for the Dickenson model of uncanny avatars. And yes, I'm like every other academician, I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity to publish something under my name, which reconfigures the valley into an inverted terrain for a roadmap of optimized immersion and interaction. Okay, so let's discuss this impact of hyperrealism in video games. Okay, hyperrealism in video games has become a benchmark of technical achievement, with studios investing heavily, and I mean, guys, tens of millions of dollars in lifelike textures, facial animations, and environmental fidelity. Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us 2 are just two examples of games that are lauded for their cinematic realism, immersing players in these richly detailed worlds. The pursuit of visual perfection, though, may actually interfere with learning effectiveness. So remember, Um, these are entertainment environments, not necessarily learning environments, though I think video games are an amazing learning environment as well. Research suggests that hyperrealistic visuals, oops, sorry. Okay. Research suggests that hyperrealistic visuals can increase cognitive load and draw attention to surface detail at the expense of deeper engagement. And so when learners are overwhelmed with this fidelity, their capacity for abstraction, imagination, and critical thinking might diminish. Moreover, hyperrealism can provoke discomfort when characters or avatars fall into that uncanny valley, appearing almost human but not quite triggering that sense of eeriness or detachment. So I'm going to kind of take a moment here because we're moving through the model, right? And we can see up here behind me on this three-dimensional little board I created, what we have up here at the very top, I start at the right and move left, is as abstract as it gets, right? And my AI came up with the great name Echo of Form, okay? So this echo of form, you recognize it as a human being, even though it's not anywhere close to one, right? Like our guy up here that's a stick figure is just a series of lines and a circle and some curves, right? Yeah, that's interesting. And you know what? I would say that thing with Prezi is a completely different, I mean, it distracts a lot of people because of the movement, right? Um, as we move down this into the valley, we see this echo of form start to coalesce, okay? So, Grumpity Linden, that looks like Grumpity Linden. So we see this echo of form coalesce and start to take on this minimalist but approach, right? This minimalist like mannequin figure without features, but then you can continue down, you'll start to add more details. So we see here, even though our person in the chair is a silhouette, you can see she's wearing a dress, she has her legs crossed. So we're starting to get more detail. Now we move down and we start to see these two-dimensional cartoons that we're all familiar with on Saturday morning. And yes, that's Scooby-Doo, Hanna-Barbera. And then we start to see later on the first of the Pixar, right, and the progression and evolution of the Pixar animated characters. And so this becomes what we call the mask of delight. And if you notice on the scale on the bottom, what we're seeing is the movement towards complexity, okay? So the more complex it becomes, we hit this bottom peak of this mask of delight. And what I'm still working on with this is I believe at the bottom peak where we see this valley is where we go from identifying with what we see and identifying as what we see. Okay? So Now we're going to move over to starting to identify as what we see, and even in this case, be what we are. So now we come into avatars, Second Life avatars, and really I'm talking about anything that can look like an original system avatar up to like the avatar that I'm wearing right now. And I'm going to show you where I am on this scale. We're going to come over here, and I'm right here. This is where I am. So um, we call this the threshold of recognition, and this I believe is where the sweet spot is. Okay, right now where we are with our avatars is really a great place to be. Okay, now even this avatar that some people might think is starting to look hyper realistic, when you zoom in on her and you look at her face, she doesn't have wrinkles, she doesn't have a lot of skin imperfections, she doesn't have you know, a lot of facial movement because she doesn't have those muscles. And as a consequence, you find yourself substituting in those things, and you can add wrinkles. And what happens when you add wrinkles? I don't know about you, but I start to experience the creepiness. Like, because the wrinkles aren't, there's not enough of them, right? They're not in the right places, and they don't change when I move my face. That doesn't mean they won't, but as an educator, I actually question that. Like, do I want them to? Okay. As we move up into the uncanny part, what I call the creep factor, we refer to this as the hollow mirror. They're things that are undeniably things we identify as, but there's something missing. And one of the great examples, other than these video games I mentioned, I don't know how many of you watched the Polar Express. I just watched it for the first time this year, and it's great. And by the way, when I tell you all these things, I am not taking away from the art that people do. The art on video game characters, avatars, uh, animated characters is phenomenal. Okay. And the art in Polar Express that goes into these characters is phenomenal. But man, when they start talking and smiling and their faces are moving, it definitely is way up on the uncanny valley, way up. Like you go, oh, it, and it's not just me. A girlfriend of mine, I told her a girlfriend of mine in education, I told her, I said, oh, I watched the Polar Express, and she goes, hello, okay, that was weird. My headset just decided to die for no reason. Okay, so but she said to me, she goes, "Oh, you mean that show, that movie with the avatar, with the characters that are so far up on the uncanny valley, like right out the gate, right?" So I was going to say, she goes, dramatic. That's exactly right. Yeah. What did I tell you earlier? Some of you were not here. Every element of our instruction that we put in technology is an element out of our control. I just did that for effect. Okay, so so now as we're going to start moving past these really creepy, uncanny valley avatars and characters, and as a consequence, in a systematic review of realism in games, found that while high fidelity graphics can enhance immersion, they do not necessarily improve learning outcomes or emotional connection. So there are indicators that stylized or symbolic representation often foster stronger identification and narrative absorption, and especially among younger players or those with diverse cognitive profiles. So these findings, let me get that out there. Again, I'm sorry about my struggling with speakeasy. These findings underscore a paradox. The more real a digital avatar becomes, the more likely it is to disrupt the learner's imagination and emotional flow. So in educational context where relational resonance and cognitive flexibility are paramount, hyperrealism may actually hinder than help. And the way to look at this is, I don't know about, I'm going to give my personal example, right? I used to raise horses. I used to show horses. I mean, for most of my life. Okay. And so today I'll watch a movie, a horse movie, or, a TV show that has horses and riders. And immediately all I see is what's messed up, or all I see is what's correct, right? That's all I see, right? Um, so I'll go, oh my God, look at the way that rider is. is messing with that horse's mouth? Why are they leaning in the saddle that way? No one, blah, blah, blah. So I can't get away from that. Exactly. You should say, yes, Priya, isn't that the truth? Um, so, how do all I know is what's missing. The more realistic they try to make it, what I notice is not what I put in there, but what's missing. Okay. That's not right. That's not real. How many of you have had, yeah, I mean, Brea is clearly, yeah, well, right. You're turning it. So then, as we turn it into the drinking game, we're now completely. By the way, I'm not against that. I have no judgment. But we're divorcing completely from the content, right? And that's the problem cognitively. Absolutely, Rosie. I'm sure you do. Whereas me, I'm just entertained, right? Because I'm not a historian. Although I'm not an expert. I mean, I know history, but it doesn't bother me as much. But because you are experts, it's glaring and a little painful. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next point. I want to talk about impressionistic and surreal art in learning. Maybe. There we go. While hyperrealism can overwhelm or alienate learners, impressionistic and surreal art forms offer a different cognitive invitation, and it's one that activates the whole brain and fosters emotional safety, creativity, and retention. So, stylized visuals, symbolic abstraction, and surreal motifs engage both hemispheres of the brain, stimulating pattern recognition, emotional resonance, and imaginative projection. And that comes from the California Learning Resource Network. So just so you know, I didn't make that up out of preference, right? There's actually legitimate bodies who have done some research in this. This principle is also central to Jorge Lozano's accelerated learning model, which integrates music, visual art, and suggestion to create multisensory environments that enhance memory and emotional engagement. I'm a big fan of Lozano's AL model. He emphasized the role of aesthetic immersion in lowering psychological barriers and activating neuroplasticity, allowing learners to absorb complex material more fluidly. I actually am very privileged because when I was doing a lot of work as a consultant with University of Houston continuing education, they had the leading program in accelerated learning language programs, and people would come from all over the world. And so I actually got certified in, I got the advanced certification in Lozano's AL, and it was phenomenal. The gal who taught me ended up being his protege. Yeah, right. How lucky do you get? A rudimentary example of this effect relates to impressionistic paintings that influence human perception and cognition by engaging the brain's interpretive and emotional systems through visual ambiguity and color dynamics. So, how many of you have gone to the museum, right? And you go and you look at the impressionistic art, and there's lines on the floor. So you might look at, Monet's water lilies, and it says here you should stand here. And so you stand there, and it looks like water lilies on a pond, right? And then you move forward, you start to walk towards it, and it turns out it's just a bunch of slash marks of paint, right? So how many of you have had that experience where you went and actually looked at the impressionism comparatively? Because I love that stuff. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? Our brains are amazing, and they are pattern recognition monsters, right? Like they will try to format anything into something recognizable. So unlike hyperrealistic art, impressionism invites viewers to actively construct meaning from fragmented brushstrokes, soft edges, and fleeting light. This perceptual I picked this word, I love it. I don't know that I can say it well. Indeterminacy, there it is, indeterminacy, stimulates cognitive flexibility and emotional resonance, and it allows the brain to fill in the gaps and personalize this experience. This visual indeterminacy, such a great term, by the way, can heighten aesthetic engagement and provoke deeper neural processing as the viewer oscillates between recognition and abstraction, right? So you're not just looking at the picture, and yes, pointillism is great for that, which is another form of abstract art, right? And so what happens is you don't just look at Monet's water lilies and see water lilies. Your brain is constantly looking at those, recognizing the extraction, refining the pattern into water lilies. It's a dynamic process. So your brain is engaged dynamically. Um, where was I? Oh, there we go. So, moreover, the Impressionist use of broken color and complementary hues taps into that psychological process response to color evoking mood and memory before conscious interpretation takes hold. Together, these techniques foster a dynamic interplay between sensation, emotion, and cognition, making Impressionistic art not just visually compelling, but neurologically enriching. Now, cartoons. So let's talk about where we start to move down into the Mask of Delight. Cartoons and surreal animation, such as the stylized worlds of Hanna-Barbera or the emotive abstraction of early Pixar, create a relational space where learners can see themselves without being confronted by hyper-real detail. So these forms invite projection and interpretation, encouraging learners to fill in the blanks with their own emotional and cognitive material, similar to the effect of Impressionistic art, because they're not perfect. This process not only deepens engagement, but also promotes critical thinking and technical skill acquisition through imaginative play. Okay? In educational settings, the use of surreal and impressionistic avatars, environments, and interfaces can foster that sense of psychological safety and creative agency. Rather than striving for realism, these designs prioritize resonance, allowing the learners to connect, explore, and transform. Feel free to make comments along the way. You're not going to hurt my feelings. All right. The Dickenson model of uncanny avatars, right? So here's my fabulous model that I'm working on. Building on Mori's original concept, this model reimagines the uncanny valley as inverted terrain. One shaped not by proximity to realism, but by relational resonance and cognitive engagement. In this model, two peaks define the emotional and cognitive landscape. One at the primitive stick figure, which is the, um, the echo of form, and the other one being true presence, right? If I'm not looking at it, I won't remember it. Isn't that sad? My own model. So, I know, right? Isn't that terrible? And between them lies a descent and ascent through minimalism, enhancement, stylized, surreal, and semi realistic avatars, each triggering distinct cognitive and emotional responses. So, as learners move from the stick figure downward, they encounter increasingly complex visual forms. Saturday morning cartoon styles, um, the emotive abstraction of Pixar, the low poly avatars common in indie games and early virtual worlds. These forms move towards this sweet spot where learners can recognize themselves. Again, we're going from relating with to relating as. Okay. I promote the idea that this interpretive gap promotes neuroplasticity, critical thinking, and technical skill acquisition by inviting your brain to fill in the blanks. So that sweet spot occurs as avatars approach hyperrealism, but they fall short at the point of creating the creep factor or uncanny effect. So that line of demarcation occurs as the model ascends too far into hyperrealism and the brain shifts from the imaginative projection to flaw detection, scrutinizing what is missing rather than embracing what is possible. And this shift marks the entry into the uncanny zone where realism undermines resonance. So in examining robotics, one can project, um, not yet. You know what so I'm going to talk about like what research I see coming out of this. Right now, this is just a model, okay? And I think the first step is going to be to do some surveys, like showing people different videos of avatars, and asking about, you could even have them choosing avatars to set up, having them looking at different skins and saying how they feel about it, right? That would be the first place I would probably start. Um, so that line of demarcation occurs as the model ascends too far into hyperrealism. The brain shifts to that flaw detection. This shift marks the entry into the uncanny zone where the realism undermines the resonance. I already said that. I'm terrible. So examining the robotics, I can project the characteristics of a dog onto a robot that looks nothing like a dog, but has similar behavior. However, with robotics today, it's impossible to create a hyperreal dog that has all the muscular movement and facial expressions of a real dog. In that uncanny zone, that dog just feels wrong, people. It's just wrong. I propose that the uncanny zone is approximately halfway up the ascending side of the curve. So just before this zone, the skins look real but lack definition of real skin, like what I'm wearing. The eyes are idealized and symmetrical. There's a distinct lack of asymmetry, skin markings, and flaws. Facial muscular and wrinkles, and the skin borders on hyperrealism but falls just short enough that the eye doesn't start to notice what's missing. In this sweet spot, an avatar can use rudimentary gesturing loops and head movements and be perceived as talking without the mouth moving. People actually see a mouth moving when the mouth is, and the mouth actually forming letters when the mouth movement is only a random 10 basic movements, or complex gesturing when only a few basic animations are looped continuously, like my avatar right now. Okay. It's uncanine. That's really good. Uncanine. Okay, for the dog. My own clients, when I was a corporate training consultant, consistently saw logos and symbols specific to their companies and fields when in fact they were only basic shapes superimposed on one another. So I actually got to do some anecdotal research with my clients, and they would just insist, like, I did a project where we were having to teach people and I was using Second Life avatars, um, and we took it out of world. They were parts of comic books and videos and games that we had created. And one of the things that you'll get into with these professionals in safety and industrial hygiene is they'll say things like, well, we can't talk about sulfide detectors. uh, I know it's not moving, but I tell you what, if you're showing this to people who aren't in the virtual world, depending on how you do it, they'll insist the mouth. Like you'll show them a flash of a video, and then you take it away, and you say, "Was my mouth moving?" And they're like, "Yeah." Okay, so it's really odd, and so they would say you can't show these sulfide detectors, which save your life, right? You have to wear one when you're in certain types of plants, um, and you can't show them. We can't show what they look like because there's no industry standard. They're all specific to the plant they're in, like Shell or um, ExxonMobil, whatever. And so I just got tired of the argument. So I made pictures of avatars, and I had made these sulfide detectors and stuck them on them, and then I would show them a flash of the avatar, and then they would have a multiple choice question that said, which what kind of sulfide detector was the avatar wearing? Was it and it would be like our company logo, ExxonMobil, la, 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 and then it would say it was just shapes, right? Every one of them, and there's 20 people, every one of them picked their logo, every single one of them out of 20. So when I met with them, I flashed the avatar up in front of the room on PowerPoint, and I flashed it down, and I said, tell me again what you saw. And so they all confirmed. All of them were like, well, that was my logo. No, it was mine. No, it was mine. And so then I flashed the avatar up there again and zoomed in. And what I had made was two diamonds, like a square, turned it so it was a diamond, and made another square and turned it on top of that so that they were juxtaposed and made them different colors. And that's all I had done. And I picked the most popular colors in the industry, and they all saw their logos. So to me, that is the research to moving forward, right? is finding out at what level do people create this abstraction and how it affects how people see this learning, right? The good news was that after that there was a whole lot of other stuff they quit fighting about, okay? Um, because they would say, "Oh no, you can't have that," and I'd be like, "The two diamonds." They're like, "Okay," they would stop fighting that argument. By the way, that class was highly successful, and I'm not bragging. It was just a huge success. People really loved it. It went from being the class everybody hated to teach and take to the most popular class ever. It was fabulous. Okay, where was I? I'm gonna mess this up. Companies and fields. Okay, mouth moving. Okay, blah blah blah. Okay. So such finite details, they become meaningless. The attempt to improve them may even hinder optimized learning for whole brain activation. But for one tiny nudge into reality, a world of learning is lost. And my mouse stopped working. Fabulous. Okay. I know, right? Right when I feel like, oh, I've got it, right? The model offers a pedagogical framework for avatar design and gamified learning environments, and it suggests that the most effective avatars are not those that mimic reality, but those that evoke it, creating space for learners to co-create meaning, identity, and emotional connection. So to me, one of the next most important things is positive transfer of learning and technological motivation. So gamified learning environments that incorporate avatars to do more than engage learners catalyze positive transfer of skills into broader technological fluency. So as learners interact with avatars through platforms that require navigation, customization, and strategic input, they begin to internalize digital competencies that extend beyond the immediate context. So the avatar becomes a gateway. Um, its responsiveness and symbolic richness motivates the users to explore more complex tools, whether it's learning to code, mastering interface design, or engaging with AI driven feedback systems to deepen their connection with the digital self. Okay. This motivation is not merely instrumental, it's identity driven. The desire to enhance, personalize, or even mythologize one's avatar fosters a sense of agency that propels learners towards a more sophisticated technological aspect. And in this way, the avatar functions as both mirror and mentor, reflecting the learner's current capabilities while inviting them to evolve. The result is a recursive loop of engagement where technological mastery becomes a means of self expression, and self expression drives further learning. Such environments blur the boundary between tool and self, transforming the learning process into a quest for deeper resonance and digital embodiment. Doesn't that sound like super cool, right? Okay, let's talk about the conclusion. Aren't you? Yeah, you're like so relieved. Okay. As gamified learning environments continue to evolve, the emotional and cognitive dynamics of avatar interaction demands deeper attention. So the uncanny valley, once confined to robots, now casts its shadow across digital education, where realism, abstraction, and relational resonance shape how learners engage and their learning optimization is enhanced. And I got to get my plug in here. The Dickenson model of Uncanny Valley for avatars offers a new lens, one that inverts a valley and reframes it as a spectrum of cognitive invitation. At its heart lies a sweet spot, not of visual perfection, but of imaginative space. Here, learners recognize themselves in avatars, not because they are realistic, but because they are open. They're symbolic enough to invite projection and yet detailed enough to feel seen. So, those of you that are interested, this is the legend, right? Echo of form, mask of delight, threshold of recognition, the hollow mirror, true presence. By the way, the photograph that's up there, that's my friend Bart Lozer. Okay, that's I told him I was going to use his image. And then there's one that I haven't put on here yet that I want to mention, and that is called Beyond the Mirror. And that's that mythic transcendence I was talking about, where realism meets archetype. And that's evoking soul, story, symbolic truth. And it represents a branch in the valley, not so it doesn't, you never hit that hollow mirror, right? When you're doing that, that beyond the mirror, that mythic transcendence. So people who are furs, right? They come in as anthropomorphized animals, particularly fictional animals, right? That don't exist in the real world. When we engage as animal avatars, yes, furs, animal avatars. When we engage as mythological avatars, when we're doing role play, even that's like, you know, I'm in a elven role play, right? So that's where you're gonna see, we don't even hit that hollow mirror because these creatures don't exist in the real world. So it doesn't matter how quote unquote realistic I make them, they're not real. So my brain never engages at that level. And so I've got to create this little branch that comes off of there. And I haven't quite figured out where that's going to be. But I personally love those avatars. And I know for me, when I am my little Arctic fox running around shopping because it's a light avatar and doesn't lag, or when I'm my mermaid, right, and swimming around in Second Life with the other mermaids, or when I'm a centaur, those are all things that give me exceptional joy because I can't be that in the real world. Um, so I like this. Reminded me of the repeatable experiment where someone dashes into a classroom making stabbing motions with a banana, and invariably people swear they saw a knife. Yeah, talking about that other part where you can show people something and they swear they see a specific image and it's really an abstraction. It's it really is real, right? That happens. Um, okay, somewhere here on my speakeasy, I thought I gave you my references. Suddenly I'm all lagged. So I'm going to share these references with you just in case you're just so fascinated that you have to go find out more. And in the meantime, I welcome questions, comments, challenges, groans of anguish, or loud snoring. It's entirely up to you. Okay? Thank you for your indulgence. And Phelan took me. Cool. Seriously, if y'all have anything you want to add or say, um, but I will. Thank you. I will tell you that my intention is to actually do some survey research to begin with around doing this, and probably starting with doing research for what people see, right? Like I did with my original clients. Just one more quick story. Not that y'all haven't had enough of them. My client, yeah, I know, right? She'll never shut up. My clients, which were oil clients, right? Oil and chemical for that safety program. Uh, I kept making these avatars for the comic book and this videos, and they were like, this was a storytelling thing. And they kept going, no, your avatars are too good looking. They're in too good a shape. It just got so frustrating. And so finally I said, oh, okay, well, I'm going to let you pick some avatars. So I'd take this avatar and I'd make it, you know, rotund, and then I'd make it look like it originally did, and then I'd make it look really skinny. And then I had them pick like out of like 5 or 6 across ethnicity, across gender, and then I came back and I shared the results. Again, this is only 20 people, and they overwhelmingly picked the avatars that were prettier and in better shape. 100%. And so I said, and they were like, wow, I just don't feel like it's representative of the people who work in our plants. And I said, and you wonder why people don't want to be operators, huh? Because that's how you think of them. I said for years, colleges, when they're advertising other programs, like engineering and being a doctor, they use models in those commercials. But in P Tech at the junior college level, they would use real people, right? And so now when you look at the marketing of those programs, they use actors and models. It's very interesting because it is about marketing, guys, whether we like it or not. Yeah, Colvin and Mayer's research on digital avatars. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying. Please don't get me wrong, right? I came up with this as a way to start putting form to things, no pun intended, in a way that we would be able to start to design things using this avatar design to actually help with learning. Okay, I think I'm done. Am I ahead of time? On time? I'm good. Okay. Then again, I thank you greatly for your indulgence, guys. I really appreciate it. And take a break. Have some fun.